Hey everybody, John Malanka here with the United Patients Group. Be informed and be well. And tonight's guest is a friend of the show. She's done a lot in this industry, but Dr. Mary Clifton. Maybe you've seen her, maybe you're not, but I think you're going to enjoy this. And we thought we'd just do something different, just have a normal conversation. And so, welcome to the show.
Thanks, John. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, so I'm seeing you everywhere. I mean, I'm seeing you because I'm in this industry, but you're covering a lot of ground, and so congratulations. Everywhere I turn, I shared with that last week when we got on a phone call. I said your name is coming up everywhere, and I'm talking to people from all over the U.S. and they'll oh yeah, you know Dr. Mary? I said yep, I do. I just got off the call with her, or I just did a pod another shooting with her. So can you? So right now you're on the East Coast. Last time I spoke with you, actually last two times, you're up in Michigan with the family, and then back home in New York, and now you're further south now, and so you're bouncing around in the, I guess the technology,
It's a
modern
little,
technology, have computer and camera will travel. So I applaud you for doing that. Can you share a little bit about your background, how how you made it to the cannabis industry? Because cannabis wasn't your lifestyle, yeah, and part of your practice.
it's a little tricky to get around in the pandemic, but it's still really fun to travel. And so I just have to be a little bit more careful and be
Yeah.
sure that wherever I'm going, you're protecting yourself. But yeah, I've been a doctor for coming up on 25 years now, and used some cannabis way back in high school, and in retrospect, probably did that to manage a lot of anxiety. I mean, it was, the 80s, and we really didn't have a lot of tools to help
Yeah.
people who were dealing with anxiety. And I probably was using it more medicinally, but probably recreationally too. But then, I had a baby really early, John. I had my first daughter when I was 17. And so
Because
that
of cannabis?
maybe.
Well, yeah. So, but I have to say, Mary's the youngest out of seven kids, right?
Out of six, yes.
Six kids, excuse me, six kids. Anyway, throwing a little humor in there, but go on.
Yeah, I had a lot of unsupervised time as a kid, which was great, but then, it was a little bit too unsupervised, maybe, who knows?
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, Chelsea's just such a fabulous light. But I went to undergraduate and medical school, and really graduated from medical school, and just always had an interest within internal medicine to provide, an opportunity for people I love innovative things, and I love patient empowerment. I love anything that allows the patient to take back their health, because so often, people come in with back pain, for example, and we inject them, we give them pills, we adjust the pill dosage, but we really don't give people a series of steps that they can do to help to control or prevent their back pain. We really underestimate the value of nutrition and movement, and we
Yeah.
say that patients won't do it, and so we just don't even teach it. So I've always been interested in that ability to allow patients to take back their health, and not, keep me in charge of managing it. So I spent years doing vegan diet and helping people to eat a healthier diet. I wrote a cookbook and a couple of books that I'm really proud of within vegan. And then
Share the titles too, please.
oh, they were the vegan program was called Get Wasted, WAISTED, Get Wasted, and then the cookbook was also the Get Wasted cookbook. Those are great old books, and I bet you can get them for free at this point on Amazon. They've been around for many years, but the diet's hard to stick with, and I really could never get traction around it, and I wanted to have a bigger impact. I was never able to really get that off the ground, but still looking for great opportunities for patient empowerment. And about 5 years ago, my brother died. And shortly after that, one of my good girlfriends died, both of these from cancer, and two really opposite experiences. One very uncontrolled symptomatically, and the other one very peaceful. So I thought I would learn a little bit about cannabis, because it seemed like it really helped in that end of life circumstance. I figured we had no data, because that's all you ever hear. We have no data. and I'll get back to being an internist and keep thinking and exploring. And then when I started to read, it became clear that there is so much information that nobody knows. Nobody has the data that is easy to understand or clearly delivered. So I made it my mission to make this data, this research available, and understandable, so that people who want to work in cannabis or people who want to get help from it for their various conditions can have that information at their fingertips.
It's amazing on how many doctors and nurses that I speak to on a regular basis who've been friends for years. I asked them how'd they get into this, and I went to one of the medical conferences here in this industry. Mm-hmm. Patients Out of Time. I don't know if you've ever been there. So I'm friends with Marilyn Mathery, and so, but they go thinking, okay, what am I going to learn? What am I going to learn? And they walk out of there like, oh my gosh, how did I change? How come I never learned about this in medical school or nursing school? And there are a handful of doctors and nurses I work with that because of that and learning. So I know you're an educator as well, and so I think there's a niche and there's a need for this, because I mean, it's still to this day. I can't tell you how many patients we speak to on a regular basis that are seniors. And I said, do you have this talk with your doctor? And they said, no, my doctor said if I do. It happened to my aunt. If he said, Lois, if I find out you try cannabis, I'm gonna, you need to get another doctor. And she said, basically, kiss off. So I got another doctor. I've heard this before with seniors say, hey, I fired my doctor because of that, and so, I just think I don't want patients to be afraid to ask the question, even if they live in a legal state or not, or a non-legal state. It's not illegal to ask the question.
Yeah.
And so
doctors are really scared because it's still federally not legal. So,
yeah.
When you're offering it to patients, you're putting, there is some level of risk with doing that. So you have to make sure that you're within the right boundaries, there, and that you talk about it properly, or you can get shut down pretty quickly. So it is important to respect all of those rules, but it's also important to recognize that we have a very powerful medicinal plant here, and the entire endocannabinoid system in our bodies that's just designed to uptake the cannabinoids and bring them into the cells. I mean, the fact that your body has an endocannabinoid system with CB receptors laid out on every single organ, it would suggest to me that cannabinoids are as essential as other hormones that operate the same way, like cortisol and, thyroid. Just there are not a lot, but there are several systems that work in the human body and affect every single organ. And it's very important to honor, what's happening with cannabinoids and make sure that they're a part of your life on most days.
I was writing an article about stress, especially what we're going through right now with COVID, and you mentioned cortisol. Everywhere I go now, months ago I said, you watch, road rage is going to be, it's going to come back with vengeance. No, everyone's going to be calm. I said, I don't think so. I just think people are just, and my article that I'm writing right before I got on, that I'm putting out in our newsletter, is about stress, of just going to the market, going to the post office, driving down the street, going for a run, going for a ride. Everyone is just tighter than a drum. And I think everyone needs to stop, slow down. We've had the 6 months to really get back to our house, change. There was a funny picture where you saw, okay, I've done everything in my house, and the guy was on his roof with a lawnmower. Now I'm mowing my he's like, I've already built 3 stories, with this COVID, but everyone's stressed out. And so
everyone is stressed out. And I think that it's really important, especially as we're all going through this collective trauma, this collective grief that we're all dealing with. We can't see our kids. People are limited with seeing their grandkids. You can't see your mom and dad because you don't want to get them sick. So there's just this, and it's a lot of grief. Really, everybody is missing something that they wanted to be able to do before. And we have to be particularly careful now with our brains, and very, very, very careful with our bodies, because the way that we integrate this trauma is going to impact the way that we process it for years to come. So you really want to make sure right now that you're tracking your the things that you need to do, that you're getting your exercise, that you're getting your sleep, that you're using cannabinoids in the formulation that you prefer, that you're taking care of your loved ones and family and friends, so that all of that is so that you're protecting yourself.
At the beginning when you're talking about your cookbook and then where your practice was and to where you are now, I think it's so important to incorporate getting exercise,
Oh my
yoga,
God.
like we were talking about stretching earlier, going out for a run. Even if you're not able to go for a run, just get outside, go for a block walk will help you.
Not only with managing the trauma, but also with giving you some vitamin D to help stimulate a super healthy immune system. And the sunshine itself is directly healthy. And the green bath you get in a forest where you're seeing multiple different layers and different
Yeah,
colors of green is super nourishing to your brain. All of those things improves your sleep patterns. This is a time where we should all be walking. Whenever I go out and everybody's out walking or running, I'm just like, I hope that you can go into this winter and into the flu season and the everything in really good shape. I mean, there's some suggestion that as we are all masking, we may see a calmer flu season because we're going to not be exposing each other to the flu either. But Australia certainly saw a lighter flu season, but we really can't tell because we still don't know how people are going to be complying with mask recommendations
yeah,
this.
yeah. It's funny you say Australia. A friend of mine, his wife works for Qantas, and they told her don't plan on coming back to work until March 2021.
Oh,
I mean, so that's pretty much, that's a big distance to say don't plan anything because you're not going to be flying. And she would go from Sydney over here to LA. That was her route. But the
yeah.
masking. Do you? Sorry.
My sister was supposed to go back to work for the state of Michigan. They initially said in August, then they moved it to October, but they just can't figure out how to make it work. And then they had some big space redo just a year or two ago to try to accommodate their spaces and make sure, which basically meant that the hallways got skinnier and everybody's cubby got a little smaller. And now with COVID, they're trying to do like every other cubby on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, and alternating. And, as soon as they reopen, somebody gets sick and then they have to shut the whole thing down for a couple of weeks. So I don't know how we successfully reopen,
Even the university. Are your kids are college age, are they?
I've got one in college, and then I have one with, who's a doctor herself down in
Oh,
Nashville. I've got two grandbabies down there, but the
oh,
grandbabies are back in school, and
yeah.
that's a little nerve-wracking. The little one is the kindergartner this year, and but Anna stayed. My second is University of Michigan, and she just stayed home and is going to work out of the New York apartment for for the fall.
Yeah. Online. I have friends that they brought their kid down University of Miami, and so her son's in a off campus place with four of his other buddies, and one had it, and now they all have it. You know what? And one guy has had it twice. So
Oh,
that kind of just throws it out the window of, oh, you're immune if you've had it once.
yeah, this herd immunity. I mean, the concept that we'll get behind it with herd immunity is hard to say because the immunity may only last about 3 months.
Yeah.
So yeah, with a virus that has immunity for 3 months, I don't know how we're going to get to herd immunity. And then, I mean, but presumably there are some people who have sort of a native immunity, and then there's the herd immunity, and then there are some people who just aren't going to get sick. So in some settings, it may make sense that if you've already been hard hit, you may be less likely to get hard hit again during a second wave. So places like New York City may have an added level of protection. But all of this is conjecture. I mean, nobody knows. We haven't had a good pandemic for 100 years. So we just don't know how this thing is going to work. I mean, it's fascinating to me, and then it's so morbid and embarrassing that it's fascinating to me. But of course, as a doctor, I love, emerging pathogens. I mean, I suppose everybody loves scary things because scary movies have a following. But I would sometimes, before I'd go to bed and I wanted to scare myself, open up the CDC's emerging pathogens and just start reading about like crazy stuff that was coming into the food system, or
That's a doctor's mind right there, everyone. So what do you do to scare yourself? Oh, I opened up CDC to put myself to bed.
I think, like this one is, I mean, it sounds like it's got some wings, like the bird
Yeah,
flu, you think,
yeah.
or maybe swine flu a few years ago was interesting,
H1N1, you
and,
know, you know Dr. Sharma, Chintu Sharma out of Maryland?
uh-huh.
So he's a medical director of a hospital, and I had him on the show, and he got emotional. And he said, John, I've been through the swine flu, H1N1, and this
Hmm.
is the first time that I really don't know what we're doing.
Yeah.
Meaning, we've seen all these symptoms come in from this to this. So it's not just, oh, you have this. This is what, you're diagnosed with this. He said he's had one nurse that had two strokes, one nurse with two strokes. She's seen other doctors. And long term, he said, I don't know what the long term is. And he's every day when he gets home, he said the first few weeks, he said he sat in bed and just got emotional. His wife's sleeping next to him, his kids are in the other room, and he just broke down of what he's been seeing. And he goes, it just,
Yeah.
and so when you're in it every day, and he's probably like you, where he reads it, doesn't
Yeah.
doesn't have to read the CDC website every night because he sees it at the hospital. But it's some
Yeah, it
serious.
was like January, February, and I started to see this coming in, and I was like, I don't know if I can get excited about this. I started hearing about it December, January, and then by late January, I was like, oh boy. And once we got into where everybody else was paying attention to it, I was already like, a couple of weeks, at least a couple of weeks ahead, and
Yeah.
very emotional and really suffering with it because the consequences can be catastrophic, as you've seen. And, my mother was like, get a hold of yourself. I just, I don't think it took her a while. And it wasn't really until it came to our city
Yeah.
and it was right in her town that we had a diagnosed case. And then she was like, now it's here. She had always felt like since we were sort of up North Michigan that it was
Yeah.
going to Detroit for a really long time, and it wasn't ever gonna, but it eventually is gonna find its way everywhere,
I think in Wisconsin, Michigan, all up there. No, it's not going to make it to our little town. And they said, you're not going to believe it's here in town. I was in Asia in January. So I grew up over in Tokyo and also the Philippines. And the
Oh,
school that I went to just had its 100-year anniversary from 1920 to 2020. And we had about, I'm going to say 1,300 people from around the world showed up from the class of 1960 to the class of 2020.
hmm.
And you heard about it over there in January.
Oh
People
yeah.
started talking about it. There's a flu, the China flu. So I'm probably going to upset a lot of people, but that's what it was originally called. It was the China flu, China flu, China. Yeah, I guess it was. And then
Well,
it
I we did
went
the
to, and
Spanish
then
flu.
COVID. Sorry,
We did the Spanish flu all those years
Spanish
ago.
flu. But over there, they were saying no, it's a China flu, and but it was funny. I'm already a germaphobe when it comes like that. Corinne and I would fly, and I wiped everything down with bleach wipes and stuff like that. Had my mask. So when I flew over there, I had my mask on already and flew back. But there were other classmates, so we a handful of us had a bug for 24 hours. It was the same symptom: fever, sore back. Next day, you can go run 10 miles. And I have others afterwards talking about, the reunion, and they were sick for 6 weeks with
Ooh.
this. And then I talked to people that still live over there, and they got it. And I was like, they said, be careful. I bet it will make it over to the States. And I remember one by one, you started hearing all these cases. And so we got in and got out, and maybe I had it. I asked Dr. Sharma if I could be tested. He goes, it's probably not in your system anymore, right? That was January. Where are we right now? August, end of August.
Yeah. So it's
So
hard to if you had a light case way back
Yeah.
then, if
But it was
you,
funny. All of us had the same thing,
because
you know?
there's so much of those little bugs that go around just
Yeah.
when you're getting, like the Las Vegas flu. Every time you go out there, you always come home with a little bug. But now you can come home with a really big bug. I mean, Las Vegas is a source of a lot of super spreader events, and yeah, just really unwise to be in Vegas right
A friend of mine, he's lived there for 20 something years, and he got that bug, a few years ago. And I said, "How was it?" He goes, "Man, came out of both ends." He goes, "I got to the point where I just sat in the bath in the shower." He goes, "I
now.
was so weak." And I go, "What'd you do?" He goes, "I wanted my mommy." I go, "Dude, you're 50 years old." He goes, "Man, I was." He goes, I had no control." He goes, "I was so sick." And then a week or two later, I talked to him. I go, "How do you?" He goes, "I lost 10 pounds." So he looked at it that way. And I said, because
At
it
least
cleaned me out. But he goes, it was scary. He goes, I wanted my mommy. And I thought, man, and I still give him a hard time. But I talked to his mom and I said, this is what your son went through. Just show you the power of moms. So out there, everyone, love your moms. If your moms are still here, love your moms. They're so important.
Yep, I'm
So,
calling my mom as soon as we get done with this. It's one of the things I'm
yeah,
tracking, one of the
good,
things I'm really trying to
good.
do. What's interesting is the position of CBD and other cannabinoids in modulating the immune system. It's especially in the setting of COVID. There's a lot of research around how CBD and cannabis can impact the T cells and the way that T cells function. And T cells have a couple of different functions within the immune system. They can help to sort of rouse a memory response for something that you've already had an exposure to, but they also do a really good job of taking a new pathogen that your body has not seen before,
Yeah,
packaging it up for the immune system, to present it to the immune system, to be like, get in here and create some immunologic response to this, create some immunoglobulins so we can fight this. And so that process of chewing up a new pathogen, finding a piece of it that makes sense to present to the immune system and presenting it so you can create the immunoglobulin response, is a really important part of the T cells. So, and we know that cannabinoids impact T cell function and can help to regulate T cell function. And we also know that they regulate immunity really well. We don't have great human data on it, but we have a really interesting mouse study where they took, they've done a number of things with mice
with
and
the rodents, I know. Poor little guys. They're just saying, "Here, let's try this." I mean, one of the first trying to interrupt you. One of the first conference I had attended, and the doctor was talking. Actually, Dr. Abrams out of San Francisco at UCSF. He was talking about rat studies and giving them THC and putting their tail on a heat pad. And we're all going, "What?" He goes, "The ones that didn't have any cannabis popped their tail off right away, and the ones that did, we didn't burn them," is what he said, but they were able to keep it on longer. Anyway, go on with your
yeah, there's
rodent. Sorry.
definitely more pain tolerance too. This was related to like how sick you got when you got exposed to a virus. And what they did with this cage full of mice is they gave half of them CBD and they gave the other half no CBD, just regular. Everybody got the same food. The
Yeah.
only thing that changed was that half of them got CBD. And then they exposed the entire cage to rat flu, which basically does to rats the same thing it does to humans. They get laid out and they can't eat or drink and they get poopy and sick and they don't want to play in their mazes anymore. And what they found was really neat, that when these rats that were given CBD were exposed to the flu, they were still able to get up and get after it. They were able to go eat their food, and they were even able to play in their mazes a little bit. So this, strikes me similar to when the flu hits your city and one person is coughing a little bit and they go to work and the other person is laid up in bed for 3 or 4 days. It may be that this CBD exposure has the potential to modulate that immune response so that you don't get like super sick, because part of it is the inoculum. It's like if somebody sneezes directly into your eye, it's a different inoculum that if you walk through somebody's cough cloud from 10 minutes ago. So the amount of virus you get when you inhale it
Yeah.
is different. And that's why it's so important to cover your nose and mouth so that the inoculum is decreased. and you'll presumably get less sick. But the other thing is when it gets into your body creates that immune response. And if the response is huge and there's interleukins and tumor necrosis factor everywhere, then that's where you get all the mucus in your lungs and the pain in your knees and the fever and all of that. So if you can sort of modulate that immune response in the way that CBD and cannabis appear to, you can, potentially have a much smoother course. So I think right now, the conclusion for me within this crazy time we're in is to position the trauma appropriately in your brain so that you store it properly, make sure your prefrontal cortex and your amygdala and your hippocampus have adequate cannabinoids. And then if you get sick, make sure that you have adequate cannabinoids to modulate that immune response. I think it's important to have something every day.
So I am a big fan of health and wellness with the cannabis products and I do a tincture. But for a lot of states, even California before it became recreational legal, or I guess 21 and over here in 2018, health and wellness was not on there, but everything else was. I mean, you could have hiccups or an ingrown toenail. Oh yeah, here's your recommendation, but health and wellness was not on there. Yeah. And so it was basically, oh, you have glaucoma, right? Wink, wink. I mean, cannabis has been legal in the state of California medically since 1996, and those were the first qualifying conditions: glaucoma and AIDS. And then I think cancer came on as well. But for a while, I truly believe that everyone should have some form of cannabinoids in the system daily, for health and wellness, bringing the body back. You talk about CBD. I always say there's about 140 cannabinoids. Where are you in there? 120 to 160 with what people say. I think I asked you that before. Are you right around there?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I mean, I think they're finding them all the time, but it's kind of like a periodic table, some are available in such a small amount. And when you actually go to ingest them, the amounts are so trace, it's hard to know what their effect is going to be.
So you keeping the body with your immune function up. Sleep is very important. Of course, we all know that as well. And then diet and getting out, getting exercise, and incorporating in some cannabinoids. You mentioned CBD. How much do you, I know you can't, this is not to replace everyone, disclaimer, not to replace a one-on-one with your own medical expert. Dr. Clifton does see patients, by the way, not in person, but on video nowadays. I think everything's not video nowadays. But, but I truly believe guidance, even with CBD, that is needed, age, weight, current health condition, any other medications you may be on, just to fine tune. It's not a one size fits all, but I think it's completely safe to do as a date, in my opinion, is like you would a vitamin or a supplement. Can you talk about that?
Oh, I absolutely think thinking about it as an adaptogen or as something that's going to help you to have optimum outcomes. Very, very, it's a very good place to position it. Absolutely. Yeah. Especially in our current circumstances with what everybody's going through. But even before this, I mean, we're designed to work, 6 or 7 hours, 5 days a week, make sure we get a couple of hours of exercise every day at least.
Higher on the work nowadays. Everyone's working from 8. I mean, I'm working 8 to 11. I was talking to my mom the other day. She's like, don't you have office hours? She says, Mom, it's just
crazy. Yeah. And I mean, it's 8 days a week. I mean, the more you work, the better off. And we're all pushing on our sleep to where we're not getting adequate sleep. And of course, our nutrition is horrifying for most people. So you're just, always burning the candle and pushing on your adrenal glands, pushing on all of your systems. And so having, I think even when you try to do a really good job, you're still so far away from where our bodies are intended to be that having these adaptogenic tools, I mean, it's so interesting that we do all these terrible things to our systems. My mother and I just had this discussion that, when you've got 30% of your grown-ups obese or overweight and, everybody is unhappy and nobody is getting their exercise. There are systemic problems in your country. It's not a matter that 40% of people have no willpower and they're just, and it's their fault. That is not the problem. You know, that we have a systemic problem with how we're managing our food and how we're managing our movement, so that we have an unhealthy population. And so we limit your movement with all of these, and your exercise with all these motorized assistants. And then we limit your ability to get great nutrition. You really have to fight to get great nutrition. And then, you know, we take away all the adaptogens, like all of the mushrooms, all the cannabinoids are so difficult to find and all riddled with, you know, prejudices and biases. And people just, you know, try to take a multivitamin and think that that's going to actually make them feel better.
Yeah.
And it just is not, it's not going to work. I mean, if we were living in a much simpler time, we would all still need to make sure we get adaptogens every day. And this is not a simple time to be living.
You mentioned, well, let me go back here before I go into that one. So for any of our listeners, just for health and wellness, what do you do on, again, is not to replace a one-on-one with your medical professional, but what do you see is kind of a balance, so you bring your body back to balance?
Yeah, I have some of my CBD products right over there. Usually I show up to an event. I mean, I have some chews, but I think probably the best way to access it, I like to do two different things. I like all of the tinctures, but I like to go with a very highly potent tincture.
Yeah.
I usually use a low potency tincture as a face oil to take off my makeup. And then after I take off my makeup, I use it on my face because it helps to really restore sebaceous gland function and helps to restore like a lot of the moisture as you're getting older. So I think that works great. I use bring it on, whatever the chemical you can find to put around my eyes to keep my eyes. I mean, I'll take it. I don't care if I lose my vision in 10 years. I do not want any of it.
For a grandma, you look okay.
But that's like a permanent like job. But anyway, the eye cream is different, but the face is all CBD. And then I use a high potency CBD tincture, and just like 3,000 milligrams per bottle, or at least 2,000 milligrams a bottle, and a dropper full of that.
You do that in the morning, you do that at night, because I know I'm sensitive where to fine tune me. If I do not the right amount before bed, I'm up.
Yeah,
it can amp me up, and I can also put you down. And so, that's the thing with people think, oh, I'm taking the CBD here all day. And again, even if that doesn't have a psychoactive effect, it still can affect driving if you have machinery, if you have to do things, if you want to relax a bit. Can you talk about little things? I mean, I'm enjoying this conversation.
It's something that I think is a really great idea to think about how it impacts you. And you can also use all kinds of different products. I love that the industry is ahead of us that way, so that if you need something that's going to restore calm and focus because you're stressed out, which can happen to all of us, you open your email inbox and it's exploding, and you have something you have to work on, and you had your whole day planned, sometimes the day kind of runs off with you and all your best laid plans go awry, and that can be very stressful. So you do need a product that can help you with being calm and focused rather than calm and sedated. So I think to some degree that's taking the CBD and wrapping it around with a good set of terpenes, with like a limited as opposed to linalool or beta caryophyllene, so that in the so I like the idea of using a tincture at night, and then I also really love for a daytime, like rapid onset response, these single sourced hemp cigarettes that are all CBD, no THC, although they burn and they smell like a cannabis cigarette, but they're just all hemp, and they're very instantaneous in their absorption. So you get, and a lot of really great innovative companies are coming up with these. I love these little these little cigarettes, and I feature them here and there on my site. Some of the companies that are doing them, they're funny because they're innovative, but they're actually like the oldest.
So the vaporizer, or they actually a joint?
Yeah, but it's a hemp. It's CBD. There's
gotcha.
no cannabis in it.
Have you,
But
speaking of which, have you ever been to hemp farm?
no,
Oh my gosh.
I haven't actually walked through it. I've
Oh,
seen them,
I was
but
educated. So for our listeners, there are about 140 different cannabinoids. THC is a cannabinoid. CBD is a cannabinoid. CBN, CBG, CBDA, THC. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And each of them have their own benefits. And so to find, different formulation ratios, terpenes. Everyone's familiar with a terpene because you stop and smell the roses. That the smell you smell from the rose, that's a terpene. The smell you smell from a lemon or a lime, that's another terpene. And pine needles, the same thing. And they all have their. That's why you see all these essential oils right now. They all have their part to play to bring the body back to homeostasis and healing. And when the CBD market kind of started coming in probably about 7 years ago, there was a bunch of crap out there. Excuse my language, but there was a bunch of crap. And it was
yeah.
frustrating to see what was out there. And so I wasn't sold on this, on all these hemp CBD companies coming on board till about 3 years ago. I was invited out to a farm. It was 1,000 acres in outdoor, 8,700 square feet indoor. And I walked through this field and I said, "I'll be darned. You couldn't tell it." What I always pictured hemp, it looked like corn stalks, like the true industrial hemp looks like a cornfield. But I walked to this field and it was like I was walking in Northern California. The smell, the hairs, the purple colors, everything was the same minus the THC portion.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a full-on education on that. And I said, "I'll be darned." And they had a location where they did sell the hemp cigarettes. They sold jars like you would go into a normal dispensary here in California.
Mm-hmm.
And that was in illegal state, but it was legal for hemp. And so, but they had everything from the face creams to body lotions to smokables to vaporization to tinctures. But that's where I had my first education on the plant of the hemp plant. It's still in the family, but I was always pictured it, like corn stalks.
Yeah.
And
I mean, the corn stalks are going to be good for making fiber, but you're going to need all of those buds and and the leaves or mostly the buds is where you're
terpenes and stuff like that too. And so there are some great companies that have come on board. And now with these extraction companies, they can come in, and I always describe it like the San Francisco 49ers in the day panning for gold, and the mud goes off, and what's left in the pan is the gold nuggets. And so they're able to put this product in, and they're able to separate THC out of there. So now this is a CBD isolate, or still under the legal limit of 0.3% for hemp. And so, but like I said, there's some great company, and if that's all you have access to, do you recommend that for you? Because I know you talk to patients all over the country, and so if they don't have access to THC, and you recommend, I guess, some form of cannabinoid in their system, and I'm assuming that you do that with hemp companies as well, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think that I thought that as I started to look at this, I was like, what is my contribution? What is my value here?
Yeah.
How can I help? Because we have to move this whole industry forward and help people. But what does it actually need? And I've thought that there would be some sort of creation of like a magic wheel where I would, be able to tell you that you have this condition, this is the product that you need. And a lot of people are doing that. There's so many different products that are coming to market that are this really great lineage, this super cool background. And it's a great idea to mix one lineage with another and try to bring the best of both of the parents together. Some of the
See,
best products have come from there.
I
Oh,
mean, you couldn't tell the difference. You couldn't tell the difference if that was a
no.
cannabis grow. I mean, with high THC, or I mean, that was, and the plants were beautiful. Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I think that people have a great idea. After you see a lot of patients, you start to hear that a lot of people with chronic, persistent, uncontrolled pain do really well with ACDC. or a lot of people with depression love harlequin or cherry pie, but we don't have as much data as we need to really draw those conclusions. A lot of people do very well with CBD. A lot, I think, even more would do better with CBD
Yeah.
products if they looked at several different products and if they were willing to titrate them to higher administrative amounts. Because a lot of people take a few drops and then they say, well, that didn't work, and they go on to something else.
How
But
long
then,
do you, when they say that doesn't work, how long do you say stick with it for?
oh, I mean, I talked to a woman yesterday who's been having trouble sleeping for 12 years, and she took CBD for a week and it
Yeah.
didn't, I
It
mean,
did not work or it did work?
it did not work. But
Uh,
I mean, a week, and she was only taking like 10 to 15 milligrams, just being really, really cautious with it.
yeah.
So we pushed her to 100 milligrams, with you titrating to 100 milligrams over the course of 4 or 5 days. And I told her to stay there for 4 weeks and then get back with me. She's probably going to need 4 to 6 months before we can really say that there was a failure there. But at 4 to 6 weeks, it might be reasonable for us to add a little more THC, and really try to push that. But I think that's the big issue, is that people have a problem that they've had for a really long time that they want fixed immediately, or they take a drop or two and they're like, yeah, that didn't work,
Yeah.
but they're taking a 250 milligram in one vial. So a drop or two might literally be, a milligram or two of
Yeah.
CBD. It's not going to get anybody anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Sleep is so important. And when that's off, a lot of other things fall in for anxiety, depression, anger,
Yeah.
pain, and so,
Circumstances where we don't have great data that the product actually helps the condition, but
yeah.
that it helps the sleep and the anxiety around the condition so much that people feel better, even though they're dealing with cancer or Parkinson's, and they may not necessarily in their particular condition be getting benefit for the underlying problem.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize that Parkinson's patients have terrible nightmare syndromes. They have them, once or twice a week, where they're being chased by a wild animal or they're getting in a physical altercation
Okay.
at work. And then, I mean, to remove those nightmares for people, like you can when you're using cannabinoid formulations, you can give people so much relief and get them to sleep.
Are you in your practice? Is there something that you really specialize in? Is it sleep, brain issues? I mean, or do you see the whole gamut?
I've been a generalist for all the 25 years that I've been in practice. I've always
Yeah.
run a general medicine practice. So I like to think about a lot of different things, and I like to specialize down into one product. So, I used to
Yeah.
do a lot of osteoporosis and women's health. And then, you can do something for a while and then it's fun to switch gears every decade or so. So
Yeah.
switching over to CBD has been great, CBD and cannabis, because it crosses through a lot of different disease states. They
Yeah.
always in medical school, if you know diabetes, you know medicine, because diabetes touches every organ in the body, and once you learn that disease perfectly, you
Yeah.
really know the entirety of medicine. But the same is probably true of CBD and cannabis, with the way that it impacts so many different disease states. Once you can spend the rest of your life trying to learn everything you need to know in medicine.
It's funny you say that. I'll present quite a bit. And one of my slides that I put up there is a roll of duct tape. And I'll click, and people look at me like, "Hey, wrong slide, man. Look behind you." And I started laughing. And I said, "Actually, that slide's up there because people will call us and say, 'Does it work for this? Does it work for that? Does it?'" And I say, "I don't want to say it's like duct tape with a million and one uses, but when you really dive deep into this, and I never use the word cure, but I say heal and help and stuff like that. But when you really do your research, you know, on what this plant does and all the different, the terpenes and the cannabinoids, how they all each play a role, you'd be kind of blown away and surprised. And I'm surprised. Well, I'm not surprised. I think a lot of medical schools are starting to open their mind and say, "Hey, we need to get this curriculum into our schooling." Earlier,
Yeah.
you mentioned strains. Are you a strain? I'm not a strain person, because if I grew something here on the West Coast and you had the same seed and you grew something out there, you know, chances are they're going to be different. And so hopefully one day it'll get to the point where you have Parkinson's, take this. You have diabetes, take this. You have cancer, take this. And like you said, the more education out there, the more clinical trials done on our little rodent friends, and hopefully get some human trials in there. What are your thoughts on legalization, full legalization?
I think we have a lot of great work coming out of
Yeah.
Israel. We've got we've got great work coming out of other places, but Israel's really leading the way on these very specific cultivars or strains or formulations, that are very high, unnaturally high in a particular part, in a particular cannabinoid, to where they're going to be able to potentially manage serious amounts of inflammation or control cancer in different ways than what the whole plant can do. But the whole plant is so powerful for so many people that really just accessing the whole plant is going to be what most people need to do.
Yeah.
And I think the faster we legalize, the faster we get a hold of it. You've got a $7 billion industry now, but we have a potential for a $53 billion industry if we can remove it from the secondary market and legalize it and regulate it and tax it. And every single state is upside down and underwater right now with unemployment.
Okay.
The faster that people legalize, the faster they're going to be on their feet and rolling. The best thing to do is get it in stores and get it sold. But I want it to legalize in a way that allows for a really great entrepreneurial environment, because of course I love the idea of somebody cooking up a potion in their kitchen sink and then being able to take that several levels out and be able to offer it on a bigger scale. There's so many people with so many beautiful, innovative ideas. I just had somebody send me a batch of CBN sweet tarts that are great little candies. They're very, very sweet and tart, and they're very sedating and relaxing with that high concentration of CBN. It's just brilliant that people are
Yeah.
doing things, thinking about them. So I want that spirit to stay. I don't want this to become some sort of weird, corporate vibe around a very natural healing plant. So we always
Well,
want to.
it's going to get there. And CBN, and I am a big fan of CBN. And so for our people who have issues with sleep, CBN is another one of the cannabinoids that we were talking about that helps with
So,
sleep. You know,
so
and
yeah.
so some companies are starting to come out with that right now. And you may have some, if you have some old cannabis from your high school, college days, and you haven't pulled it out of the cover, for 30 something years, it will convert to CBN.
Yeah,
And
you want to get rid of that old straw, nasty stuff, because it does have a higher level of CBN. And we don't have great data on how CBN works. We have, a little bit, again, of mouse data where they gave it to mice and they appeared to get more sluggish. I mean, that's really the best we've got with CBN. But a lot of anecdotal data that it's much more sedating
yeah,
than cannabinoid or CBD. So that might be one formulation for people who are dealing with a lot of, very resistant insomnia, where they, just need to conk their head with a hammer. That product might be the thing to use.
it's, you mentioned a bunch of, a lot of people making their products in their home and doing their own innovation. And with California becoming 21 and over adult use only, and now I should say our local government's in there, it pushed out a lot of great companies that didn't have the money to get the license. They didn't have the money to go get their commercial kitchens, and they've had to kind of just
Close.
close,
Yeah.
And then at the same time, with the adult market here in California, a lot of doctors' offices closed down because people don't need the doctor recommendation anymore, and they can just go right in the dispensary as if you and I are going to 7-Eleven and pick something up. And so the
The,
doctor,
the market is fascinating. It's a very shifting market. I mean, I have to say, going into medicine 25 years ago, I thought it was going to be just I go to my office and I see patients and I get reimbursed and everything's fine. But that market has been shifting constantly,
yeah,
because what gets reimbursed, what doesn't get reimbursed is always changing. And what you're trying, and the diseases that we're looking for, the way that we can look for certain diseases changes, so that you can have a higher level of success identifying different conditions like Alzheimer's. For example, we have tests like the one that the president did that will let us see if you're dealing with Alzheimer's early. That's one test that you can use, but there's a whole bunch of other tests that are that will help you identify. Or osteoporosis. I mean, that wasn't a thing that we could treat for a long time, and now we can. So yeah, I agree with you that everything, I mean, this market is undergoing a whole bunch of growth spasms, and I think there's going to be constrictions and expansions that are going to be, very exciting to be involved in, but also just stressful and complex for the investor or the inventor.
Yeah. Well, I I was going to let you go, but I was going to say, with all these new inventions, especially face creams and stuff like that, lotion. I mean, nowadays everything. I mean, they're coming out with everything, like you said, face creams, gums, um, uh, sodas have been around. I'm not big on the soda portion, but in I can't tell you coming across our desk here, United Pace Group, the stuff that we get sent.
Yeah, you get
Take a look at
censored.
this. What are your thoughts? How can we get it out there? And so some, great products that come out, and others I'm like, not,
I just got
not,
approached by a
not
company
yet.
that wants to do like a Fitbit, integrated vitamin and CBD patch
Yeah.
that then if you exercise, the patch will secrete what you need it to secrete after exercise, or if you're falling asleep, the patch will do that. So it follows your Fitbit data and then responds to it with the products that you need real time. So it's this personalized nutrition thing really taken to this extremely high level. And there may be value for that in some people.
Yeah.
I still can't convince myself that there's value for that, for everybody. There's probably value for making sure that you get great nutrition, but there may be a point where you need to focus on your relationships or your exercise or something else that is also important to your health, rather than honing in on your nutrition that tightly.
Yeah. Speaking about home, being at home, we're all at home doing this whole COVID, and cortisol and stress levels are up. What can you share with our listeners one last time, just to get
Mm.
talking about getting your body back to balance, and incorporating some, why it's important to incorporate some type of cannabinoid.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you can worry about so many things. You can really worry about so many things, like the ozone coming out of your shower, or you can get your health can become such a there's so many factors every day. But at the same time, there's some basics for health that we all can do, that really, if you follow the basics for health, it's going to take your entire day just to reach those goals. Hydrating, sleeping, spending time with the person you love, and also, with your friends and family, making sure you get your exercise, making sure you get some sun exposure, and then when you dive into your eating, looking at very nutritious things, when those things, just those basic health patterns are going to occupy the majority of time that people have to devote to their health. So I think the best thing to do is to always circle back to the basics and just check them off. Track them and check them off. Are you doing all those things that you need to do each day or most days to have a good day? And also just check in with yourself. Like, where am I at right now? Is this a good day? Is this a fairly good day? And most days should be, very good to great. And if they're not, then do you need to get off of your computer? Do you need to spend more time with your loved one? Do you need a little bit longer of a walk today? Did you get enough sleep? It can almost always track back to very simple things. But the cannabinoid formulations, the adaptogenic herbs that are on the planet and grow naturally and are designed to support that healthy lifestyle need to be incorporated to make sure that you're as healthy and safe as possible.
Awesome. I agree with you there too. So how can they find you?
Oh, well, you can find me at cbdandcannabisinfo.com. That's where all of my free videos are, my 100 video collection, and
Uh,
all of those are free. And then you can always click on there to have, a deeper conversation with me or one of my coaches if you want to.
so you're doing a lot. So CBD and THC, your website again?
CBD and cannabisinfo.com.
My
And the
apology, guys. So
out
CBD
and cannabis
and
info.
cannabisinfo.com. And the and is spelled out A-N-D.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So always great working with you. And
Oh,
thank you again, Dr. Mary Clifton. This is John Malanka with the United Patients Group. Be informed and be well. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you again, Doctor.
thank you, John.
Hi, John Malanka here with the United Patients Group. I hope you've enjoyed our videos. Please click like as well as subscribe to our channel here on YouTube. Also, follow us on Twitter at Patients Group and on Facebook at United Patients Group, as well as for our podcasts. Please click the link in the description below. We'll see you there. Bye-bye.